Alright, well, I'm here, I'm back in Switzerland. I made it back to Switzerland after a cancelled flight and then a delayed flight due to the snowstorm, which you can see has been delivering a lot of the white stuff right here. I just wanted to say a few things about the IDIT that we did in Paris recently. I had a few thoughts and a few feelings on it. The first one was thank you really a lot. Thank you deeply for sharing that kind of an experience with me. It was very moving. I don't know if I've been that deep before with a group, or maybe I haven't been that sensitive to it. I'm not sure, but whatever it was something really special, and I really appreciate everything that everybody brought to the table to share in that space. It brought up a few things. There's a conversation that we had about energy consumption, and I feel like this is where some part of the inner dance really began to click for me. In this consumption-based model that we have, I think I prepared a lot of things that were there to be ready to be given as a kind of a consumable experience, and what ended up happening was I was feeling more tense. I felt like I was holding the room. I felt like I was holding something for myself, holding some kind of energy. Maybe I was fitting into the role of facilitator or the leader or something like that. And what was really interesting about it was on the last day we had a super intense inner dance, and there was a lot of emotion flying around. You could see the room collapsing and channeling something really deep, deeper than I really knew how to hold, actually. And I suddenly started to drop into myself, into this idea of responsibility, and that I'm responsible for what's happening here in the room, and started to take that on. And it was very difficult for me, actually. There was a part where I was a little bit worried. I wasn't sure if I'd done something irresponsible, if it was okay to go that deep with people, whether I'd taken people somewhere that they didn't want to go. Basically, it was a lot of me worrying about me, and it was pretty much unsustainable. So I had to take a moment out and ask myself, what can I do? It was a moment of taking a breath and saying, what's the right thing? I really had to check in and ask myself, what's the right thing to do now? And my response was actually quite simple. It's like, you've got to reverse the flow. You're taking energy in at the moment. This fear is kind of consuming energy, so you have to reverse it and give it out. And so I went round to all of the facilitators and started checking in with them and thanking them a lot for being there, and thanking them for supporting, and thanking them for it felt like kind of giving them something. I was giving energy out instead of consuming it through this kind of contraction, and it felt like it was empowering them. It was like I didn't think I had that much energy, but as soon as I started to give it out, the dynamic changed. And after I'd been around to everybody and given them this kind of energetic given through language, words and that, something then happened to me, and I collapsed into my own feeling and allowed myself to be facilitated. Or I couldn't hold it anymore. Something broke, and I broke down and was in tears. It was very emotional, and I felt like in some way the room changed in that moment, because I wasn't holding something for myself anymore. I wasn't holding the role. I wasn't trying to handle everything myself, and the upshot of that was it actually changed. It seemed to change the dynamic of the room, and people stepped into themselves a little bit more, which was great, actually. It was so necessary. And it opened up this conversation about consumption-based models of society, really, consumable experiences, as opposed to what we began to touch on there, which was a co-creative experience. We all brought something, and that felt like real empowerment. I stopped being the guy that to give. I kind of stopped this role I was playing of just being the giver and other people being the receiver. I think I subconsciously slipped into that dynamic. But real empowerment lay with allowing other people to bring themselves and everything they had to the table, and really demonstrate it and really add that to the conversation instead of me trying to dominate it. So that was a really interesting finding. And the other important point that I really wanted to touch on was that it was so great to see people bringing everything of themselves to the space, to the room. They really stepped up, and they, especially the shadows, they really brought some of their darkest stuff. And it wasn't a personal thing. I say their darkest stuff, but none of our dark bits are really as personal as we think they are. Maybe we've been given that to work on, or maybe that's the work that is, or the reality of the situation right now, that this is the thing that's here in front of us to work on. But it's so important to recognize that context of it not being personal. Deepest thoughts, a thought in a language that was given to you by a culture. It's not about the people, it's not about the individual as much, but the shadow stuff that was being brought up, the feelings that had been dissociated from the collective psyche, was really, really interesting, and really useful. Like, this is a really, really useful thing, especially in times like these. We really need to go there and look at that and take responsibility for all of that stuff and look at it on a larger and collective level. It's difficult to avoid what's happening in the world right now, and if we keep denying it and ignoring it and putting a smiley face on it, then it's not going to work. We're probably not going to survive as a species. Maybe it's our time, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But what feels the most loving and the most true is to go into that and recognize that and really take responsibility for it. It frees up so much energy, it frees up so much more energy once it's integrated, once you're familiar with it, once you don't have to spend energy keeping it out, and it just frees up your capacity for love, really, learning to love this stuff as it happens. I notice in myself that I'm much more relaxed the more familiar I get with the darker places. And so there was a lot of that in this inner dance. There was a lot of going deeper into the dark places to retrieve some really valuable things. It's like we feel like we look at what an enlightened person looks like and we want to skip steps. We want to skip steps and go straight to the top. And so we just act the way that we think an enlightened person looks like, but you can't really skip steps. You got to recognize your own teeth. You got to recognize what you're capable of, and pushed in any kind of situation what you could be capable of. You think that you couldn't do some of the terrible things you see other people do, but given the right circumstances, if you were in that position, you have to know that you would be capable of that, so that this disconnection, this fracture doesn't continue, and we really begin to know that, okay, I could go there. Once I know that I could go there, I don't have to go there anymore. Once I know that it's possible, that I'm capable of it, doing all of the things that we see other people doing and disown within ourselves. We have to recognise that this is a species, and we're all capable of these kind of things given the right circumstances. So it was really touching for me to see everybody diving very, very deep into those shadows, and it's uncomfortable. Like this work's sometimes really fucking uncomfortable, to see that emotion to turn straight into that darkness, but it's so needed, it's so necessary right now. If we don't, it's going to be difficult for us. But I really have this feeling and begin to recognise that our capacity for pain is our capacity for love, and the extent of our enlightenment is really about the darkest place that we're prepared to go within ourselves. And so we don't have to fall into that kind of dystopian thing, but we do need to confront the things that are causing problems inside. And so this is as much a message to myself as everybody else. It's not just me telling you what you have to do. You don't have to do anything if you don't want, but it's for me to recognise this within myself as well, and to keep going into that, and to keep going into more and more uncomfortable things, to keep softening into that kind of darkness and softening into that discomfort, just to open up myself. And as you expand, it's inevitable you're going to cover new terrain, new parts and patches of the shadow that you've not yet been to, and yeah, I think that's where this expansion, this love, this growth really starts to come to a head. So that's probably enough rambling for now. I'm glad to be back in Switzerland. It was great being in Paris, but I've missed this. This is my darkness training. Every day I go swimming in this thing, and it helps me. The physical practice, I mean, it's very grounding. It's very grounding to jump into cold water. All your electrical fields suddenly just dissipates, and everything that you've been stored up, all these thoughts that are electrical signals buzzing around, it puts you in the present moment very much. But also it just teaches you about standing up straight with your shoulders back and walking into the dark parts, the parts of yourself that you don't necessarily like, or you don't want to own, or you don't want to take responsibility for. And I say parts of yourself, but it's really parts of the collective as well. So yeah, this is my training, and on that note, I'm gonna get in the water. It's been about -10 for the last week or so here, so I'm expecting this to be a little bit nippier than when I departed. But to be honest, it's been cold all winter. It's not. You can't put really a silver lining on it. It's not going to be like less cold one day. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, I can definitely feel my toes wanting to freeze. My legs. But it's okay, you know, capacity to embrace the plunge. Yeah, it's just as good as it's always been. Thank you a lot. Thank you for your time, thank you for your courage, thank you for your willingness to go to the places that are difficult and become more of yourselves. That's it from me. One thing I did forget to mention in that video is that we have another training coming up in the UK on the 19th to the 22nd of April in Leicester. I've heard the venue is very nice. I think it's going to be a really deep dive. It seems like each training we do gets deeper and deeper. The conversation keeps opening more and more, and so if you want details for that, you can check it on the Facebook page, IDIT Training UK. I think that's pretty much everything, so have a great day.